Hello, my fellow horsemen from wherever it is you're from. This is your friend Luis Jimenez, and as you can see, I am driving a truck that behind me is pulling a horse trailer, and I happen to be going to a horse show with my favorite horses, my dear horses, 3 of them. But on the way there, my great teacher, one of my great teachers, very dear to my heart, teacher, Nelson Pessoa. And I remember one of his an anecdote with him. You know, when we were in France, in the show in La Baule, France, we went to dinner one time. I mean, this man, I'm talking about a man who has incredible culture, an outstanding sense of the horse, understanding of riding the horse, and the sport of show jumping. That's his specialty. But I mean, he understands riding in this totality, as good as the best. And I mean, every time we went to dinner, he had so much to say. He always had so much to say. I mean, the richness of knowledge, the vastness of knowledge that this man has in his being is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And yet he is such a humble man. He's very humble. He's very simple. He's very open. And with a very particular style of teaching as well, because you know he had great results in his teaching, but his teaching was very indirect. He was not a totalitarian as other teachers are that work well. He kind of insinuated things and showed you how, and he showed you by example. He had a very particular way of teaching, yet very efficient. It worked. At least it worked for me. I know that, and it worked for a lot of other riders who made it to the top of the sport. And anyway, going back to the anecdote, we were at dinner one time, and he was just talking about these amazing insights on horsemanship, on horse training, on riding, on the psychology of the horse. It was just amazing. And I told him, I said, well, you know, Mr. Pessoa, why don't you write a book? You should write a book. You know, we don't have a book by Nelson Pessoa. If you notice, there is no book by Nelson Pessoa. And I told him, why don't you write a book? You should write a book. And he said, look, the reason I haven't written a book is because everything about writing is already written. Everything there is to know about writing is already written. I'm like, well, I think you can contribute. He says, no. He told me, I think you will understand this because your father is a musician and you understand music. And yes, my father was a musician. He passed away a few years ago, and he was a conductor, an orchestra conductor, and a great musician. And Mr. Pessoa said to me, he said, you will understand this because you understand music. We are not composers. We are interpreters. We're not composers. And the reason we're not composers is because everything is already written. So our job is to interpret all that has been written by these great, unbelievable geniuses, which are the old masters. And so anyway, that was his advice. And my advice to you is, you know, which I followed, by the way. I followed his advice. And my advice to you is follow his advice. You know, start reading about horses. I mean, not about horses. Start reading the old masters. Start reading the old masters. You're going to find a treasure, an invaluable treasure in the old masters, which I have found. And once you read them, reread them. Keep reading them. Every time you read them, you're going to find something you missed the first time, something you're going to understand, something that you didn't understand the first time. You're going to see something different. You're going to understand something better than the last time. You're going to discover that is a treasure. I mean, these people took the trouble to write the deepest insight about writing. These people invented writing. Now I'm going to throw at you some names so you can look them up. And I always start with Xenophon. That's, to me, the first one. You start with Xenophon. Xenophon the Greek. Start with this first one. Second, from there I would jump to Pluvinel. From there I would jump to Gourinier. From there I would jump to Boucher. Read Boucher. After Boucher, you got to read Steinbrück. Next is Steinbrück, Gustav Steinbrück. It took me a long time to read the first time I read the Steinbrück book. It took me about a year, because you got to read word for word. I mean, this man not only was he a writing horseman genius, he was also an incredible writer. So every sentence has a meaning. Every single sentence has a meaning. He writes beautifully. So Steinbrück. After Steinbrück, you got to go to Felice. James Felice. After Felice, I would go to Nuno Oliveira. And after Oliveira, let's just leave it at that. I mean, there's a lot more, way more. It's an infinite. There's so many people that wrote, and they write such amazing books. You know, George Morris, Vladimir Litauer, just to mention a few. Those are show jumpers. Gordon Wright for teaching. That's just a few that I can mention, but whatever they wrote is built upon the shoulders of the old masters. Anything that is past Nuno Oliveira is written on the shoulders of these absolute masters. So I would suggest you start with these. You look these masters up, you read them, you study them, and then keep going back and forth to the newer ones, and it'll all fit together. It'll all make sense. So anyway, that's my advice, because I remember today Nelson Pessoa on the road to Guadalajara. I remember Nelson Pessoa, my very, very, very dear teacher, and his advice. We're not composers, we're interpreters. We must interpret what is already written. I'll leave you at that. Till next time.